Now the next, control. Now this method is one of the first used by retailers to minimize supply chain disruptions and kind of level out their risk factors. With this method, retailers really take control of the variables that contribute to the risk in an effort to reduce the severity or eradicate the likelihood at all. So first, technology solutions create this vertical integration to connect each layer in the trading party with the retailer directly. And this provides the retailer with early warning mechanisms, and it gives them the power over any deviations. The next step, as a means to ensure products available to meet the demand, inventory levels are buffered as a safety net. Not always the best move. And lastly, by proactively managing excess capacity in production, handling, or transportation, the severity or likelihood of the risk is reduced again. So that's control. The next is where I'm going to focus most for the rest of our presentation, collaboration. And it's most prevalent today and by far the best known method of risk management. And that's the use of collaborative technology and processes. These efforts improve visibility and share risk-related information across the entire supply chain. The method allows for risk then to be spread out across the trading party network as a practical way of distributing the power and the responsibility. And that leads to more controlled risk because the risk then takes place in respective areas and the responsibility falls within each link of the supply chain. The last is agility, and working in tandem with a collaborative risk management process, retailers can introduce agility to the supply chain. This is where both proactive and reactive measures can be employed to contend with risk. These are practices like postponement and multi-sourcing or supplier diversification, and they provide choices for supply chain managers to delay activities or select which suppliers they should source from to avoid possible threats. Now, each of the methods I talked about in risk management, they have merit, but it really depends on the scenario you're faced with. But the last two best practices, collaboration and agility, provide the best overall response to managing risk in the retail supply chain. However, collaboration and the subsequent agility that results from that group effort can only be achieved when you involve suppliers at every level where the real benefits are possible. Now, when we talk about involving suppliers in our supply chain, effective collaboration was really never explored because of a lack of trust. That traditional lack of trust and control previously prevented retailers from working closely with suppliers, and it just caused friction and often redundancy when both parties duplicated the same task. Now, with the transparency of shared data and that mutual collaboration, retailers are more comfortable offloading responsibility to the suppliers. The trend to more open and bilateral communication has made a lack of trust a non-issue. The trust factor is no longer a barrier for developing and maintaining good working relationships, and most retailers have dismissed this as a concern. So we can agree, supply chain risk can best be managed through collaboration, not just the initial means of avoiding and controlling risk, but the capability to evaluate risk factors that already exist in your supply chain. Risk can rear its ugly head anywhere throughout the product life cycle. The amount of risk you're capable of minimizing is realized in distinctive ways at each point in the process. So I'd like to point out some examples where the shift to more collaborative processes are key to risk mitigation. First, during product design and development. Now, most retailers only think collaborative practices during product development take place between internal teams in their organization, and there's little interaction from the supplier or the service provider. But by connecting with the factory early in the product development stage, You provide advanced visibility and set the expectations with all of the parties involved. These ways of connecting with the factory include sharing forecasts and plans with suppliers earlier in the life cycle, or seeking out innovative new material or products that are already available through your raw material suppliers, or even by reserving capacity and taking a position on raw material to ensure availability. So these are examples of how that collaborative process comes into play during product design and development. Now let's move into production. During production, risk can best be minimized by unifying critical data in a single solution. Once you've unified your data, your teams can increase protection and decrease the impending issues. For example, your teams can identify a lack of diversification in your supplier base that could leave you open to a greater risk. They can then make changes to diversify across regions or suppliers that will make your supply chain less susceptible down the road. And this is a big trend that we're seeing right now with supplier diversification, shifts out of certain countries and emphasis into other regions. Now the last is during logistics. Now, risk and agility are optimized in this life cycle, this phase of the life cycle, through real-time visibility into your supply chain. And that provides the ability to quickly react to demand changes. Also, with increased visibility, you can make order and shipment modifications quickly to dodge any incoming obstacles and improve reaction time to customer changes which do occur often. The shared visibility and collaboration during this phase also gives the suppliers at each tier insight into possible drop styles or order postponement. And this leads to a more nimble supply chain.